There's something slightly ridiculous about having a 120-inch screen in a normal living room. But to tell you the truth, that's exactly why I love it. Because once you experience films, sports, or even gaming at this size, going back to a normal, smaller TV feels a bit silly. Now, if you watched my previous projector reviews, you know that I was already seriously impressed with my long throw setup. And honestly, when it comes to the Valerion, I'm still super impressed with that projector. But the challenge I've got with this room right here never really changed. As you can see behind me, there's ambient light, limited space. I mean, I have enough space here, but when the projector was not in use, it was kind of still in the way. And I'm trying to create a nice cinematic setup here, but without turning the entire room into some sort of dedicated man cave. So this time, I'm gonna try a different direction, ultra short throw. And this is the new AWOL Vision Aetherion Pro. What a name. Right, first things first, this is probably one of the cleanest projector setups that I've had in this room, because unlike traditional projectors, this sits ridiculously close to the wall. No ceiling mounting, although yes, technically you can still do that if you want, no cables running across the room, and no one walking in front of the projector beam like your uncle during the World Cup final or your kids. Everything stays tidy, even the screen hides itself away when you're done with it, but more about the screen in just a moment. And talking about the World Cup, honestly the Aetherion Pro feels like it was built for sports as well, while also, of course, being seriously impressive as a home theater setup. You get that stadium or huge sports bar feel without needing a giant 120-inch like permanent TV dominating your house, and when you're not using the TV, you get this black void in your living room, which is, depending on your living room, can be a bit of an eyesore. And the Aetherion Pro paired with this motorized floor rising screen, honestly, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this, a pretty neat setup. Still feels a little bit sci-fi every time I use it, but it's that satisfying feel that with one button, it goes on and it's great. It's very easy to get this working, by the way. All you do is connect this little USB trigger to the projector itself, so the screen rises automatically when you power everything on. And the screen goes back into its enclosure when you turn everything off. Honestly, genius. Before we go any further, quick disclosure, AWOL is sponsoring this video. But I also want to be very clear about something. I choose my partners here very carefully, especially when we're talking about expensive tech like this that you might actually have in your home. I try to be very careful with that. In fact, in the last 5 years, we probably only sold 2, maybe 3 Max projector brands here, and AWOL is one of them, and that's not by accident. At the end of the day, this is my business, and I'm here for the long run. I try to choose products that make sense for you, my audience, and the ones that I'm personally comfortable with having in my own setup, in my own home. So yes, this video is sponsored, but my testing, my opinions are exactly that, mine. Right, with that spiel out of the way, let's talk about the Aetherion Pro. And yes, the screen itself, I upgraded from my previous Fresnel screen, which was great. I mean, it was very hard to set up. It was 100-inch. It fit nicely into my room at the back here. But this 120-inch floor rising setup really is the icing on the cake with this beautiful unit as well. Initially, I thought this was slightly unnecessary, and it might be unnecessary for a lot of people, but until you actually sit down and watch something on this, yeah, then suddenly your normal TV or your normal setup starts to look a little bit like a small tablet or something. Now, physically, the Aetherion Pro looks properly premium. I mean, I remember seeing this in Las Vegas in January this year at CES. I was taken aback, and it was pretty much love at first sight. And surprisingly, it doesn't come with some completely ridiculous flagship price as well. And AWOL also tends to run quite aggressive deals throughout the year, so definitely worth constantly checking if there are any offers running. I know right now they are running a launch offer, so definitely check them out after this video. Design-wise, you've got this titanium thermal mesh design around the body, sapphire glass lens protection, which is, again, very premium, and genuinely very solid build quality throughout the unit. Even little details like the motorized lens cover make it feel properly flagship. And this is one of those details that is not just there for aesthetics. This helps, keep dust away from the lens in the long term, which absolutely matters with projectors. And because this is an ultra short throw projector, the actual unit itself saves a ridiculous amount of space compared to traditional projector setups. Word of caution, you might want to have a friend helping you build this out. I mean, I did it myself, but I had to struggle basically because I'm on the second floor here and I had to pull this thing up from a pallet that was delivered in a massive truck. Eventually I got it done in a few hours. But yes, if you've got someone helping you, it'll be a lot easier. This entire setup just feels cleaner, far more practical for me here. And that's going to be the same for normal living rooms. I'm trying to basically create a space there to review TVs and projectors exactly for that purpose. So I'm kind of trying to replicate a normal living room. But obviously when you go for something this premium, you're caring about one thing and one thing as a priority, and that's image quality. And this is where the Aetherion Pro starts to flex its muscles a little bit. This projector pushes 2600 ISO lumens, which is important for me because clearly this room is not some perfectly blacked out cinema room. Of course, when it goes dark, it gets like that, but I've got windows like everywhere and I'm here pretty much every day during the day. So I want to enjoy watching YouTube videos, Netflix or whatever, sometimes just watch music videos while I'm working. But yeah, ambient light, real world conditions, and despite all that, daytime viewing is perfectly possible here. Yes, you can go brighter with the Aetherion Max, which is another beautiful device, but the Aetherion Pro is already plenty bright for me. As I said, I can watch anything during the day, especially paired with that fluorescing ALR screen. Let me show you a close-up of how effective this screen actually is. The whole point of this screen is that it really rejects ambient light coming from the side, so when you're in front of it, the ambient light hitting the screen is reduced. Now, contrast is another area AWOL clearly focused heavily on, and there's a lot of granular settings as well that you can tweak in the settings. The Aetherion Pro combines AWOL's EBL, Enhanced Black Level technology, with a physical iris system to achieve a 6000:1 contrast ratio. And it also gets a dynamic contrast all the way up to 60,000:1. When it comes to EBL, don't do what I did a few years ago and I forgot to turn that on. You have to go in there manually and turn it on because it's off by default. But honestly, for a UST projector, black levels are seriously impressive here. Not OLED level, obviously, before you come at me in the comments, but genuinely far closer than I expected. And at night, that's when the magic happens. This thing is absolutely beautiful. The moment I saw this in action at CES in Las Vegas, as I said, honestly, it was love at first sight because they had it in a purposely built setup, and do make sure EBL is enabled in the menu settings because it generally makes a difference in darker scenes. Instead of blacks looking washed out or grey, there's actual depth in there. It's gonna be tricky to show you in this video, but I'll try my best to record it using different cameras, different lenses as well, to make sure I capture the absolutely as close as possible for YouTube. But the shadow detail is excellent too in person. It's just one of those things that is hard to believe is a projector. And because AWOL also added proper iris control here, darker scenes feel more cinematic instead of flat or grayish. And the color performance is ridiculous as well. The Aetherion Pro covers 110% of the Rec 2020 color gamut, and it's ISF certified too. And if that sounds a little bit too nerdy, basically what it means is really rich, punchy, cinematic colors that still look natural. Animated films is one of the first things I test, look incredible. Nature documentaries, insane. Of course, it's all about the content, but watching high quality content on this really pushes it. But I really pushed it by throwing the highest possible quality content, you know, on Netflix, Prime Video, YouTube, everything at the highest settings as well. Sports looks vibrant without looking fake, and importantly, it feels fluid as well. You don't see those jitters. You know, I remember testing the LTV 3000 a couple of years back, and that was already good for sports, but this is on another level for sure. And because this is a proper RGB triple laser setup, you avoid that washed out look that cheaper projectors can sometimes have, especially when watching sports. You know, the green of the grass, you know, when you're watching any sports that's on the grass, looks a little bit gray or, you know, kind of not natural. And that's definitely not the case here, as you can see. AWOL also added advanced anti-RBE technology here, which reduces the rainbow effect artifact. This is something that some people notice on DLP projectors. Personally, I'm not hugely sensitive to rainbow effect in general, but even when I intentionally look for it here, it was very difficult to spot and I honestly can't see it. Especially using the Warm 1 preset, which automatically enables AWOL's anti-RBE processing. Yeah, that definitely goes away. And out of the box, sharpness is excellent. You can tune it in and make sure that everything's in focus, but this is probably one of the sharpest UST projector images that I've personally seen. Not even kidding, you know, just make sure that you spend some quality time during the setup as well to align it properly and adjust the focus for your space and your screen. But you've got true 4K Ultra HD resolution, edge-to-edge clarity, and AWOL's PixelLock technology, helping maintain detail across the entire image, so there's sharpness even in the corners of the screen. For 120 inch, I mean, you can even push it bigger. But yes, you can see in this ridiculously detailed YouTube footage here how texture have depth and colors are punchy, but in a natural way rather than oversaturated. So yes, generally for a projector, this really is quite something. And the fact that this can technically scale up to 200 inches is honestly ridiculous, in a good way. Right, let's talk about software and smart features, but before I forget, make sure to check the links in the description because AWOL, as I mentioned, are always running some special discounts and promotions. So yeah, there's a QR code here as well if you're watching this from a TV. Software-wise, this runs Google TV. So setup is very familiar, very straightforward. Netflix, Disney+, YouTube, Prime Video, everything is familiar and easy to set up. And unlike some cheaper projectors that, the interface might feel like you're running on COBOL or something, this actually feels quick as well. So they didn't cut corners in the processor, in the memory in there. All the menus are responsive, apps launch quickly, and the whole system just feels genuinely very snappy. The setup itself overall is very easy too. I'd say within 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how many accounts you've got to set up, you're all done. Screen alignment and keystone adjustments are surprisingly straightforward too. For extra precision, they actually let you take a picture of the screen and you upload that to the projector itself through to the network, which makes the whole process even smoother. Talking about networking, Wi-Fi 7 support is also included, which is nice for future proofing. Even if you don't have a Wi-Fi 7 router right now, it is the latest technology. So honestly, the specs in general on the Pro are very, very close to the Max version. So unless you really need that extra brightness of the Max, the Aetherion Pro is a nice sweet spot for value for money. You've also got AirPlay 2, Chromecast and Miracast support all built in. You can set up Apple HomeKit in there as well. Really, everything that you need is in there. And AWOL also added this AI shortcut button for quick image optimization and adjustments. To be honest, I still prefer manually tweaking the picture settings by myself, but if you prefer simplicity over spending 45 minutes adjusting contrast like a complete maniac, like me, this is genuinely useful. There are also AI features working behind the scenes for things like scene optimization, AI super resolution, and AI darkness detail enhancement. Again, I prefer to go in there and check it for myself, but you can adjust it so that it is customized for your space, for your type of content that you're watching. Talking of which, gaming, right? It's surprisingly good on this. You've got HDMI 2.1 support, VRR, ALLM, Dolby Vision gaming, and wait for this, response time down to 1 millisecond. That, from a gaming perspective, insane. I remember reviewing monitors that was kind of slower than that. Again, that 1 millisecond is exactly the same as the Aetherion Max. I think this is wild for a projector this size, to game and have that response time. Really cool. And because you can push high refresh rates at lower resolutions, fast-paced games actually feel responsive and enjoyable to play, even though I'm not playing competitively. Would I choose this over a high-end OLED gaming for like competitive esports? Probably not, but for cinematic gaming and for pure enjoyment of gaming, yeah, having your friends over or playing with your family, it's next level fun. Everything just feels massive and incredibly immersive, and because the image fills so much of your field of view, it generally changes your gaming experience. Some games that you might play normally on the TV suddenly change and you can see a lot more of action and a lot more in your peripheral vision. Especially for driving and first-person shooters, I definitely notice a difference there. Now, talking about immersiveness, audio is interesting, right? Because the last thing you want to do when you spend so much on a projector is to go, oh my gosh, I got to spend another couple of grand on a massive hi-fi setup. And the reason this is interesting is because with this projector, you don't actually need to spend a lot of money at the same time as you buy the projector. You can wait, you can start completely simple like I have here, just using the built-in speakers and adding a sound bar later, or even go full home cinema mode later on. And that flexibility really matters. Without cheapening the experience, you can calmly wait a few months to get your surround sound or whatever sound bar that you might want later on. It's totally possible to watch movies and whatever content just using the main speakers. But where things get really interesting is when you add a proper surround setup. You can actually configure the Aetherion Pro as part of a 5.2.2 system. What that means is the projector itself can function as part of the central audio channel alongside the dedicated speakers. And of course, once you pair this thing with proper surround sound, you're gonna get something quite special. I saw this in action in Las Vegas and yeah, that was not far from being in an actual cinema room. A quick mention for the floor rising screen as well, because I gotta say, like audio, having the proper screen also changes the entire experience. When it's off, the room still looks clean and minimal and you can have your own decoration, but one button later, you suddenly have this massive 120-inch cinema setup. You can automate this further as well by customizing your sensors or whatever, but just by using this USB trigger, one button, and this happens. And because this ALR screen is specifically designed for ultra short throw projectors, you maintain contrast and brightness far better during daytime viewing. That combination of the screen and projector for me matters way more than some people realize. I'd say getting a decent screen is a higher priority when it comes to getting a projector these days than getting a proper audio setup, but that's just me. Is this better than a TV or a traditional long throw projector? Honestly, they both can be excellent, but they're just different approaches. The Valerion, for example, still really impressed me, like massively, especially for a more traditional projection setup. But for this room here, and honestly my normal living room as well at home, and probably yours, where you don't necessarily want a giant black TV dominating the main wall of your beautiful living room, the Aetherion Pro in those situations make far more sense. And here's something that not many reviews, including my previous reviews, don't cover a lot, which is the running cost. This also makes sense long term. I used to have a large 8K OLED TV here, and sure, it looked fantastic when it was on, but even getting closer to it, I could feel the heat coming out of it, and the bill at the end of the month, yeah, that thing was expensive, not just to buy, but the energy costs over time. I was just running some of the numbers on that, and I just wanted to make this a little bit more realistic for you and more relatable, because yes, I could compare this setup to an 8K OLED TV that costs the same as a small car, but that's not exactly relatable, right? So instead, let's talk about big screen setups. A proper 120-inch OLED TV isn't really a normal consumer option right now. Even LG's top-of-the-range OLED currently tops out at 97 inches, I think. So a more realistic comparison is something like a 115-inch high-end TV still, but still massive as well, impressive. But even then, this still costs about $20,000. Now, comparing that to this, even if you add AWOL's 120-inch floor-rising ALR screen, which I've got here, you're looking at roughly $5,600, as I said, before any deals or bundles. Over 3 years, this projector and screen setup lands at around $5,800 including electricity. That 115-inch high-end TV, around $20,600. That's roughly a $15,000 difference. And that's before that convenience aspect as well, that it gives you 120 inches, but it goes away when you're done, so it doesn't kind of stay like a black hole in your living room. And that's where the setup really starts to make a lot of sense. Here I now have a cleaner setup, better space efficiency, and a huge image size when I want to use it. So not to mention the genuinely impressive black levels for a UST projector. I can't ignore how immersive sports, movies, gaming feel on this thing. With the World Cup coming up, I'm a huge football fan. This setup is going to get used a lot. Friends coming over, football, movies, gaming, probably too many snacks as well, but never mind. And seriously, the fact that this can scale up to 200 inches is still ridiculous to me. I settled on 120 inches here because I still wanted my balance in the room, but it's nice knowing that this thing can go completely insane if you move spaces later down the line. It can go to 200 inches. And looking at the competition around, the Aetherion Pro feels surprisingly competitive, considering what you're getting here for the money. So yeah, this might be genuinely one of the most complete living room projector setups that I've tested so far. UST projectors are clearly getting to the point where replacing a massive TV no longer feels like a compromise. And as I said earlier, after living with this setup, going back to a smaller screen feels a little bit silly. Right now in May, June 2026, there are still some launch offers going on, so I will make sure to keep all the links updated for you. But like I said, AWOL are constantly running new deals as well. Check out the links in the description or scan the QR code here if you're watching this from a TV. And thank you so much for watching. Cheers.